Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Resident Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Daniela, an emergency medicine resident doctor, where I'm taking you behind the scenes as I'm building my company called Payscope MD, making physician contracts more easier while also bringing on amazing people who are doing things outside of medicine to showcase that you can have a life while being in medicine. On this episode, this is my first solo episode of 2026. So I really wanted to update you guys in terms of what's been going on, what am I doing, what I've been up to, and most importantly, what am I going through right now? As I mentioned, this is about really showcasing the behind the scenes of me being a busy resident in my intern year, which is my first year of residency, while also building a business and also having this podcast and also having a lot of different ventures that I'm interested in. So the last time that I had a solo episode on the podcast was back in December, a couple days before New Year's, and it was titled my ChatGPT 2025 Wrapped, where I kind of went through what was ChatGPT telling me about myself as a nice little recap of everything that I've accomplished this year. And we went through, all the amazing things that happened for me from graduating medical school, matching in my top residency program, moving into my first apartment, coming up with the idea of Payscope MD, and going on this amazing journey of entrepreneurship, connecting with amazing people, and obviously starting this podcast. Since then, what has happened is, as you guys probably have known, and the reason why this is my first solo episode of 2026 when we're already almost halfway through February, which is crazy, is we started introducing guests. So I think the first thing is talking a little bit about the revolution of what I'm thinking this podcast is going to be. So originally, as you guys can hear in the intro, it was me trying to get you kind of like the behind the scenes of me building this business while in residency. And I really wanted to kind of focus on entrepreneurship where it parallels and meets medicine. And I think that was most likely the tagline that I was running with. But I think as I was really thinking about more of what are like the theme that I want to lead with, I just think that I want the theme to be that doctors can be great outside of medicine. So just because you're a doctor doesn't mean that you can't have other interests and aspirations outside of medicine. Because I know for me, that's something that frustrates me all the time. Where it's like, okay, you're a doctor, you're kind of put in this box so that you're only going to be good at medicine. But clearly that's not going to be the case for myself, and there also is so many other doctors across the world who are doing amazing things while being in medicine. Now sometimes those aspirations and things that they're doing might be medicine adjacent, and sometimes they're not. But I think regardless, the idea and showcasing that doctors can be much more than just having a white coat, can just be more than seeing patients in a clinic, and showing cases that you can be great in other things. And so with that, I wanted to really branch out and connect with a lot of other doctors who are doing that. And so we were able to get our first guest on the podcast, which was with Dr. J.R. Smith. He's an orthopedic surgery resident over at the Mayo Clinic. To be honest, I didn't even know if he was going to be able to reach out to me. I've been following him on social media for a while. If you know anything about Dr. Smith, he essentially has chronicled his entire journey getting into medical school and definitely now in residency, and has built an amazing social media platform. He talks about fatherhood. He talks about being a surgical resident. He talks about, being a husband, and most importantly is been creating content both on YouTube, on social media. He has his own mentorship community called Teach As You Learn, where essentially he helps mentor primarily pre-med students, right? And especially maybe early stage medical students as well. So he was the first person who I thought about would be perfect in terms of like the idea and concept of like, he's obviously a surgical resident at a very top prestigious program, but is also balancing so many other great things and doing it well, right? Like this is not somebody who's like creating content for fun, which I know this is probably fun for him to do, but like he's actually really good at it, right? Like he's done the podcast stuff. He's done amazing work. And so he was the first person I thought about in the back of my mind of like, okay, this is what I want to do. And I didn't think he would get back to me, but he did. And he immediately was like, hey, I would love to be the guest. And he was our first guest on the podcast. I loved it. It took a lot for me to realize and figure out how the heck do you actually, how do you record a podcast with a guest, right? Like so far I've been recording these episodes primarily just myself, audio, kind of similar to what I'm doing right now. And it went really well. Like I said, the response and reaction was great. I think I quickly realized too that the importance of having short clips were helpful. So when I had short clips, they kind of went viral in terms of people being able to see it. I think that was great. And JR's episode was kind of the launch of the podcast having a YouTube format. So primarily it's been all exclusively Spotify. But once I had JR and I had some video with me of us recording through Riverside, which is the platform that I use to record these videos, I was able to upload on YouTube and quickly became one of my most viewed podcasts to date. Obviously, we're not in the millions or even thousands of views, but in context of me starting this podcast back in December, it became one of my most quickest viewed videos, and the YouTube shorts for it went crazy. Like one of JR's clips had over 1,000 views in 24 hours. And so I think that was great. And then we transitioned to having other guests on the podcast. We had 2 residents on the podcast, which were really cool. 2 people that I actually got to kind of know via LinkedIn and becoming LinkedIn friends. One was Dr. Christina Henderson, who does real estate, and one is Dr. Mahalia Robinson, who also does real estate, and she's a pathology resident over at Johns Hopkins. But, point being, like, the power of social media for me to connect with these individuals has been great. And then we ended January with Dr. Antonio Webb, the Dr. Antonio Webb, if you guys know him, as the orthopedic spine surgeon, which was also a huge reach of an ask. I was just like, hey, I don't think this guy's going to get back to me. But once again, by the next day, he was like, hey, I'm absolutely happy to help you in whichever way possible. And it was a great episode. And once again, his clips went viral. Had a really good response with him talking about his journey to medicine, his social media company, WebSpace, and all the amazing stuff that he kind of does while balancing being an orthopedic surgeon. And so, point being, that's a little bit of what we've been doing with the podcast, of having those guests. And so with that, like I said, that kind of took up all of January. So January was jam-packed of me, booking these guests, getting everything set up, editing, promoting. We opened up an Instagram page as well. I'm working on the TikTok. I'll get into that soon. But, so like the point being, like, I was like every single week consistent. So I was very proud of, like, to start 2026 having a video every single week. And because, like I said, I had all these guests and I didn't want them to kind of wait in the pipeline, I was like, we're just going to get this all through in January. So with that, that's why I haven't really been able to kind of check in and kind of give more of a solo episode. Now, why am I giving a solo episode and where's the rest of the guests? So we have a lot of guests lined up, and I actually have to reschedule a lot of them. And I'll tell you a little bit why I need to reschedule in a quick second in terms of my updates. But I have a lot of guests lined up. I have a couple friends who are going to be on the podcast, 2 of which are my residents, which could be fun. Both are musicians in their own way, which I'm excited about to have them on the podcast. I have a good friend from medical school who is a dentist, who collaborated with another good friend that I kind of met in the startup world, who created a company called Tubi. Or excuse me, Tubby. I always want to say Tubi. It's pronounced Tubby. So I'm excited to have them on. I have a couple other residents who'll be joining on the podcast. And I also have some attending physicians who reached out to me as well there too. So I'm excited to have all these people be part of the podcast overall. So we have a lot of great guests that are going to be coming up to help supplement some of the content. So if you guys are more interested in listening more about other people's journeys to doing other great things outside of medicine, whether it's entrepreneurship, content creation, just anything. I think that's something to tune in for, in addition to me, once again, ranting in solo episodes like this. Now, business-wise, let's talk a little bit about PayScope MD. As you guys know, is what I'm building, is my baby. It's the thing that I'm, really trying to throw a lot of my energy and attention to. A lot of great things has been happening with PayScope. I've been able to connect with so many other great founders, a lot of great mentors, which ironically have all been in emergency medicine. So I think that kind of leads me to think a lot about how EM is I feel like has a lot of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial tendencies amongst a lot of docs, which is kind of cool. And so I met this one doctor who was super helpful and has honestly become like an amazing business mentor for me, and has given me so many connections. When I tell you, like, after my meeting with him, I had already like 10 business meetings set up to talk about things. So I think that's been helpful. I actually met with a couple attorneys that helped me think a little bit more about PayScope in terms of its infrastructure, of thinking about, okay, on a legal perspective, what are things that I need to do to make sure that we're not, promoting any false ideas of what the company should be. And I think it just made me really reinforce making sure I'm clear of what I want this product to be, right? Like, I think something that I want to make clear is that I want PayScope MD to be a tool that people use whichever way they choose. Like, if you want to use this tool to then better yourself and educate yourself before seeking legal advice, by all means. But if you don't, and for whatever reason that may be, maybe cost, time, whatever, energy, whatever the case may be, then you at least have something to go off of. But I don't want it to become a across of like, oh yeah, like the Payscope MD algorithm told me like I'm supposed to be getting this or that. That's where it is. So, once again, I think it helped open up a lot of doors in terms of, what are things, looking like on a legal perspective for a business like this that's kind of in this new space that nobody really knows about when it comes on the legality of things. Like AI in the legal tech space is not really, there's really not a lot in terms of like regulations right now. There is a lot of conferences coming up to talk more about that. But I think that's another reason why I was like, okay, we need to kind of, focus on what we're going to actually be doing on that standpoint. On a user standpoint, I think the last time I talked to you guys, we were like at 25 people using it. Because the power of social media and the connections I've been able to make, we've doubled it now. So I've had 50 people use it. Once again, all 50 organic people of me not knowing them. So it's not like me bombarding people to try out the product. These are people who on their own have tried the product out themselves and have loved it and gave me really good feedback. So I'm excited for that. And I think for me, I've been making some small tweaks on my Lovable database that I've been using for the platform. And so the next step for me is really focusing on getting an engineer on board because, like I said, Lovable has been great for this MVP design. But I think in terms of a paid platform, like, I just don't think it would be that sustainable, right? I think it can work, but I think once again, the big thing, as I just mentioned, on a legality standpoint, is data and security and compliance. And that's something I don't take lightly. And I really want to make sure that we focus on that and having a strong foundation. Like I said, on the MVP stage, I don't think you need to get that bombarded with all of that per se. Like you should still have some protections in place, but I'm not going to get like, obviously, I'm not going to be focusing on getting like SOC 2 compliance from an MVP stage, right? Like you're still testing. But I think now, if I'm going to be asking people to pay their money, like I really want to make sure that we have that nailed down of like, okay, what exactly are we doing to secure these contracts, make sure they're de-identified, making sure we're building things properly, because I think that's a whole rabbit hole within itself if you understand there. So that's something that I've been working on. I've been interviewing some people. I've been using YC Combinator. I've been reaching out to some people who do different events of who will be interested in getting a CTO. It's honestly weird interviewing people because I really don't know necessarily the right questions to ask. This is where I kind of lean on to more mentorship to kind of figure out that process as well there too. And just trying to figure out what does it look like to hire an engineer, like what qualities should I be looking for? Because obviously if you're an engineer, you're good at what you do, you have the experience. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly like the experience and background that they have and maybe make an alignment with Payscope MD. Because like I said, what we're building is much different and not necessarily big in the space per se. But that's what I'm looking for. But once again, if you're also listening to this, I'm always looking for a full stack developer who can come aboard as a CTO to kind of help me build this business. So feel free to reach out to me at, getpayscope@gmail.com. I'm always willing to listen. But yeah, like I said, those are some of the things that we've been building and doing. I'm also working on our marketing strategy. So I just created an Instagram page. I still have the X page as well, but I'm still trying to figure out a little bit more on the social media side. How else can I promote Payscope and become more dominant there and also more consistent? I feel like the most consistency that I post is primarily on the LinkedIn page and reposting on my personal one, which has been kind of helpful. But yeah, I think I definitely need to tap into more to the Instagram, the X, and all the other social media platforms as well to really get the name out there and, just really show what Payscope can be. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out that aspect. But the other side of my marketing strategy that I've been kind of working on is creating partnerships and collaborations. So I've been reaching out to different organizations and societies that I thought would be maybe a good fit for Payscope in terms of what their members can get in exchange. And so I have one collaboration in process. I'm working on drafting up an official contract for it, but I had a great meeting with them. I can't say too much because I don't want to announce it ahead of time, but I've kind of been able to kind of secure that partnership and deal. So I'm excited to be working with this organization. It's an organization that I actually was a part of when I was a medical student. So super excited to be collaborating and working with them overall. And honestly, the person who I talked to from this organization also gave me really good business advice because he's also in the tech startup world while also being a surgeon. So super happy to do that. So I actually want to replicate that and try to collaborate with, different organizations, different societies. I reached out to one of my previous professors back when I was thinking about Payscope. And he even mentioned that, a lot of organizations and societies would probably want something like this for their members, because especially when it comes to salary compensation and in contract stuff, like there's just not a lot of stuff out there. So I think if we can get the word out and have some good partnerships, I think it would be great, because it's also similar to what some of my competitors are doing in terms of being able to, be a sponsor for some of these, different conferences and so forth. Speaking of which, the next thing I want to start looking into is kind of planning out conferences for 2026 that I think PayScope might be helpful for, or a good fit to go to. And, with this being quarter one, I think this once again lays down a really good foundation for me to figure out what do I want the rest of 2026 to look like. And so, that's exactly why I want to start looking to conferences, because this is the prime time for you to meet literally my target audience, which is primarily going to be resident physicians and fellows. And so conferences are a perfect time because everybody goes to conferences and they love to go to the exhibit booth. And I can only imagine myself going to the exhibit booth and having like PayScope MD gear and just having a small, like, I think the benefit too, I don't really need a big table. All I need is just like a small little booth, maybe a couple accessories with my laptop to show people what PayScope is, and that's it, right? So that's my goal of hopefully kind of solidifying a couple conferences that I want to go into. I think I mentioned this in one of my previous episodes of solos, of talking about how I'm trying to turn this into a research project as well about PayScope, and trying to use the residents at my program as my research subjects to test PayScope up to other standards and see how it works. And hopefully we can get that finalized in terms of IRB stuff and get this project submitted and potentially accepted into a journal or for one of the conferences, particularly in the emergency medicine space, and, go from there. That now becomes me, killing one bird with two stones, of presenting my own research on PayScope while also promoting PayScope in general. So I think that would be cool too. So we're working on that on the back end. And once again, I really want to collaborate with the GME offices and so forth. So I got to figure that part out. Once again, this is where I'm going to lean on to mentorship, because I know there can be sometimes conflict of interest between different GME offices and so forth, but it definitely some way or somehow can get done. Because I just think about, for example, at my institution that went to med school, University of Connecticut, Dr. Ryan, who's the, owner of Boards and Beyond, like was able to kind of like, secure some type of partnership with the school at the time when he was affiliated, to get us discounts for Boards and Beyond because he was a faculty member. And like I said, like you just think about so many schools nowadays have, Boards and Beyond are offering discounts and group discounts and so forth. So it definitely can happen. I think once again, we just got to figure out how we can really go about that and how that partnerships and stuff will go, because I think that's going to be a huge part of my marketing strategy. It's kind of interesting, kind of thinking more about my marketing strategy of like, this is obviously a B2C type of business, but I think long term, in terms of what's going to make it really sustainable and create a lot of revenue, is the B2B aspect. But obviously B2B is going to take a lot of trust. It's going to take some time. I'm working on it, like I just mentioned with the one partnership, but it's going to just take some time. So in the meantime, you know, we're going to have to focus on making our B2C part strong, of getting the word out, getting people to use it, get people talking about it, and then transition to the B2B and have that in parallel. So I'm working on that kind of side of things as well there too. Speaking of promotion and getting the name out there, I, once again, through the power of social media, have been collaborating with amazing people, honestly, through TikTok, who have been gracious enough to give me a platform to talk more about PayScope MD. So I'm going to be writing a quick op-ed, a little bit about PayScope MD in an emergency medicine journal, which I'm excited about. So that should be coming out sometime in early spring. I'm going to be hopping on a couple podcasts out there as well. One of it's going to be the Startup Physicians podcast with Dr. Kerfman, which is going to be excited for me to kind of talk a little bit more about PayScope as well. And yeah, I have a couple other events lined up for me to kind of talk more about the project, what I'm doing, the business, how am I balancing it all, hence the fact the title of today's episode and so forth. So we do have some things lined up and cooking. So I'm excited for that, to see how it all plays out. And yeah, I think that's kind of like where we're at with PayScope residency wise. As mentioned, we're in February, so we are halfway through our intern year, which is crazy. Time is going by fast. I've been primarily on my emergency medicine block, so I've been primarily working in the emergency department, fast paced, learning a lot. It's been busy, but day by day, learning, little by little, and getting better every single day. I feel like something I've been proud of myself the last couple of weeks is the autonomy that I feel like I'm kind of slowly getting better at, and managing more and more people. For me, like, I feel like every single shift I'm able to kind of like maybe take one extra patient compared to the day before, and feel a little bit more comfortable managing and working up people. I think my differentials are getting better. So I think I'm learning a lot. So I will take that. And, but there's still so much for me to learn in this, couple months before my first year. So I'm excited to kind of see how it all plays out. I think I told you guys too, I was supposed to be studying for my boards and getting that taken away care of. Unfortunately, because of the northeast weather with snow that's been happening recently, which once again, it's honestly been a while for us in the northeast of not really having much snow, but something about this winter has really kicked in the snow. So, unfortunately, I took part one of step three. If you guys don't know, step three is a 2-day exam. So I took part one already, and then part two got canceled because of the snow. And now I'm kind of stuck because to reschedule my exam, I can't really reschedule it for another 6 weeks because that's the next available date. So it puts me in a little bit of a pickle, but we're going to be aiming for sometime in early March to mid March to take this exam. So hopefully we can get this part over with and never have to think about USMLE ever again. I also have to do some research because I've heard that USMLE might be changing their exam, but that's out of the scope of this podcast. So that's something for me to kind of worry about a little bit later on. So, anywho, those are some of the things that I kind of have to think about and look more into. I'm trying to think what else. So now the main thing of the today's podcast that I want to talk a little bit more about, which is a post that I made on LinkedIn that went viral that I want to share. So I want to give some context. So as I was mentioning before, obviously life has been a little bit lifing, and I was mentioning how I have to reschedule a lot of guests on the podcast. And the reason I need to do that is because unfortunately I've had a multitude of deaths in the family, which was very unexpected, definitely not on my bingo card for 2026. And it's been tough. I'm not gonna lie. This is my first interaction of really dealing with death in my family that really personally impacts me. And so I think it's been a whole multitude of emotions that I've been going through in addition to working, in addition to having the business. At the time that I've been recording this, it's only been like a couple weeks fresh of me having that news. And so I really kind of put the business side on pause. So all the updates and things I just told you guys have been things that I've been doing up until the death of some family members. And so I really haven't really got back on track and done anything for business and even the podcast. Like at the time that I'm recording this, it's been probably about a 2 to 2.5 week hiatus of me not posting an episode. And so it's been tough. Like I said, I think it was just hard for me to fathom. And two of the deaths in my family were literally back to back, like a day apart, like not even 24 hours. And it was rough. And I'm so thankful at the program that I'm at to be able to kind of have a little bit of some separation and just have some time to myself. And most importantly, just take care of my mental health, which is most important. And I'm so thankful that I'm nearby family to which, I'm able to kind of be able to have some comfort and just people to kind of support me because I can only imagine if I'm so far away. So with that, I had a lot of guests already lined up for the month of February that I decided to reschedule and push to March because the rest of this month, unfortunately, I will be dealing with funeral services and just want to give myself some time to take care of my mental health as I know that that's going to be something that I'm going to need for myself at this point. And yeah, just kind of navigating this space has been kind of weird. I'm not going to lie. And so those are some of the things that I really have been dealing with. But so I wrote a post on LinkedIn about this because, particularly for one of my family members, which was my grandfather who passed away, I was in and out of the hospital with him when he was admitted. I was the one who actually called the ambulance for him to go to the hospital. And I got to see him the entire time in terms of from the beginning of the admission to the time that we, as a family had to make a decision to make him comfort measures and him ultimately passing. And it was ironic because I was just seeing a TikTok a couple weeks prior before my grandfather was sick from a surgical resident. I cannot recall her name, and I really am trying hard to find back that TikTok so that I can give that person a little bit of a shout out in terms of the idea of what my post became. But essentially, she was talking about the difficulty of being a resident in general while also balancing life, and particularly balancing the health and maintenance of other family members, and the dichotomy of like, you're a resident, you take care of people, you're working these busy hours, but guess what? Like life doesn't stop because of that. And you unfortunately have to find a way to pick up yourself and keep going and make decisions for other family members, and you just don't have that space and time to process things. And I definitely learned that for myself in those couple weeks afterwards. And so I wrote this piece on LinkedIn, and I'm thinking about turning this into a full op-ed article, because I think it'd be something important, especially in the residency space where the conversation about mental health is at an all-time high, and rightfully so. And I think this is something that just isn't talked about enough. I think we talk about on a mental health standpoint, which once again, it's very much important to have these conversations about, the burnout, the long hours, so forth. But I think once again, this is another reason why residency is tough. It's not necessarily the work itself, but it's the things that come with it that we just don't have no control over, such as, in my case, grief and just dealing with loss and seeing this dichotomy of it. And so I want to share and read out my LinkedIn post that I wrote. And I'm probably going to, like I said, turn this into an op-ed out there because I think it'll be important. So I will start by reading it. So, I learned a new kind of I learned a new kind of grief in residency. Not the kind we talk about on rounds, the we've done everything we can, helplessness, but a quieter, heavier one. The kind where you know exactly what the labs mean. You know the trajectory, you know the odds, and still somehow this time it's your family. In the hospital, knowledge is armor. Numbers protect us, trends reassure us. We cling to protocols because they give us chaos a shape. But grief doesn't follow algorithms, and loss doesn't care that you can recite causes of death from memory. It's a strange cruelty in being medically fluent while watching someone you love slip away. You hear the same words that you use every day: creatinine, lactate, oxygen requirements, but now they land differently. They're not abstract, they're personal. Each result feels like a verdict you didn't ask to interpret, and still you show up to work. You staff the trauma, you admit the patient, you write the note, you smile when someone asks how residency is going. Because residency doesn't pause for grief. You don't control your hours, you don't control your schedule. You don't control when loss enters your life. You just learn how to carry it between shifts. What makes it harder is the duality, the whiplash between what you know and what you hope. Medically, you understand when things aren't going to hold up. You see the writing on the wall long before others do, but emotionally, you cling on to the smallest possibilities. A lab that's not, quote unquote, not worse, a vital sign that stabilizes, a moment that feels like mercy. You live in two worlds at once: the clinician who understands the inevitability and the human who refuses to let go. No one prepares you for that contradiction. Residency teaches you how to manage patients, not how to grieve while you're being responsible for other people's lives. It doesn't teach you how to walk in a room to deliver bad news while your heart is already breaking. I don't know how to solve this tension yet. I just know that it exists. And for now, naming it feels like the only honest thing that I can do. So that's what I wrote. I wrote that a couple days ago and it went viral. Like, it got over like 6,000 people viewing it, commenting, reposting, and so forth. And I was not expecting it. Mind you, I wrote this at like my lowest, like within tears, because as I kind of mentioned at the end of my a little bit of my article, of like, you live in this weird space where you know exactly, like the minute I knew my grandfather was being admitted into the hospital, I just saw the writing on the wall. The labs were looking horrible. I just knew how things were going. But the lines are blurred because that's my granddad. And I'm holding on to the little piece of faith that I have left of like, okay, he's going to do okay. He's going to be fine. Okay, maybe the labs today would bounce back and be better. But the writing was always on the wall, right? And it's hard because I hear the monitors beeping. I could look at the blood pressure dropping. I can see them starting another presser. And I see all these things happening. And I know what this all means. But still, I'm human and I'm a person. And most importantly, this is my granddad, right? And I think that's what makes this job tough, is because, as I mentioned, nobody teaches you how to cope when I have to take care of a patient when deep down my heart is breaking and thinking about a family member. And this is exactly what that TikTok of that surgical resident mentioned, of like, there was conversations and people where they're on rounds and have to step aside and go to the bathroom and make a family member CMO, which is comfort measures only. Or, they're making phone calls about a loved one who's already in the hospital and they're miles and miles away. And because you are the quote unquote doctor and have the medical experience, you're kind of unfortunately put in this position to make decisions for other people. And it's hard, but that's something I just thought about. And like I said, I'm super thankful for all the people and the reactions, because I wasn't expecting that at all. I wasn't doing this for attention. It was something for me to therapeutically experience, or share how I was feeling. in that moment, and I wasn't expecting it to blow up in the way that it honestly did. But I think it sparked a lot of great discussion, which is why I want to turn it into an op-ed for more people to really see and, make it be known. And as I kind of mentioned at the end, like, I don't know how to resolve this tension yet. I don't think there is one, but I think for now, speaking about it, making it be known is something that can kind of really help me deal with grief. And as someone mentioned to me recently, is that grief is cyclic, right? Like, it comes and goes in waves, and it's a very strong emotion. And I couldn't agree more. Like, there are days that I feel great and I feel like, okay, I can get through the day. And there's some days where I'm like, oh my God, like, today's a rough day. And on top of work and then coming home and just thinking about stuff, you're like, oh man, like, this is really, really tough. So grief is a tough emotion. And so the next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit tough one for me, as I'm dealing with like family arrangements and so forth, relating to the family members who passed away in my family recently. But that's something I just kind of like wanted to share to you guys. So that's, I think, is all that I wanted to talk about on this solo episode. As mentioned, we're going to keep doing a mixture of solo episodes in addition to having guests on the podcast. I'm working on being more consistent of doing both video and audio. I know this podcast right now is audio because it's literally 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm coming off of my shift at 3 a.m. And it's been about 2.5 weeks since I posted a podcast. So I at least wanted to get a solo episode out there so you guys can be at least aware of why I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus just due to personal reasons and mental health. Just so you have something out there in the meantime until I'm able to rebook a couple guests and get some more podcast episodes going into March. I probably will be able to squeeze in one more solo episode before the month closes out. But as I mentioned, like, as I just said, like, we have a lot going on personally that I just need to take care of right now. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. For you guys on Spotify, make sure to leave a review, share to other people. If you guys are listening on YouTube, as I'm going to try my best to be more consistent of posting more video content so you can see more of my face and get to know me a little bit more, but make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And lastly, I'm going to work on getting this podcast on Apple Podcasts, as I'm quickly realizing a lot of you guys use Apple, so I'm working on that as we speak. And I'm working on getting a TikTok so I can post some of the clips from the podcast on TikTok. But in the meantime, they're always on my LinkedIn page and they're always on YouTube Shorts as well under the Resident Founder podcast. So with that, once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Resident Founder podcast. Until next time.